twin brother's lies destroyed my life. My parents kicked me out, and now, after years of neglect, they're asking for my money. I'm a 28-year-old female with a twin brother. Growing up, my twin brother and I had quite different treatment from our parents. For some reason, my parents were certain that my brother was destined for greatness, whereas I was labeled the black sheep. Since I was more interested in sports and making friends than in studying, they continually compared us, which was discouraging and damaged my self-esteem from an early age. As a child, I had to watch my brother have elaborate birthday parties for his pals, while I was treated as an afterthought. He frequently had sleepovers with his pals, whereas I was never allowed to bring my friends home. To be honest, I dreaded every moment of my youth. My grandma was the only person in the family who seemed to care about me. When she came, she always brought me my favorite chocolates and occasionally gave me a few bucks to treat myself. Later, as the years went on, this overt preference for my twin brother evolved into emotional abuse directed at me. My parents would openly insult my academics and activities. No matter how hard I tried, I could never satisfy their expectations of being the ideal child. Although I excelled at athletics, they forbade me from participating in extracurricular activities because they wanted me to concentrate completely on my education, just like my brother. As a child, I felt frustrated and helpless. Later, during my sophomore year, I was grounded again, this time for using Snapchat on my phone. I hadn't done anything wrong, but like all teenagers, I downloaded the app to stay in touch with my friends. However, my parents considered this a major crime and a violation of trust because they had barred me from talking with my pals. They went crazy, flung all of my belongings around the room, ripped the doors from their hinges, and informed me I would have no privacy as long as I lived under their roof. Watching my parents attack me in this way, my identical brother, rather than sticking up for me, made things worse. Our parents' wrongful acts produced a toxic environment, allowing him to take advantage of the situation. He developed the habit of lying about me, falsely accusing me of things I never did, so he could get away with everything. If he stole something, he'd easily transfer the blame onto me, and my parents, who were already inclined to believe the worst about me, happily accepted his falsehoods. He would insult me in front of my schoolmates, and mock my attractiveness. Despite this, I had a large circle of friends at school because I was personable and willing to connect. My twin, on the other hand, suffered socially and disliked the fact that I could interact with others while he, as an introvert, felt uncomfortable. This jealousy boiled over during our 14th birthday party when none of his buddies came. I'm not sure why they did that to him, but in stark contrast, my friends treated me to ice cream. And I had a fantastic day. This irritated my brother even more. To get retribution, my brother started spreading false tales about me at school, depicting me as a spoiled brat. He falsely accused me of physically assaulting him at home. Since our parents loved him more, he escalated the situation. Without my knowledge, he faked proof. He would punch himself, causing injuries such as a black eye or a bruised shoulder. The next day, he would boldly stroll into school, exhibiting his self-inflicted injuries as proof of my alleged assault. In fabricating stories, when our parents questioned him about the injuries, he would lie, claiming that they were the result of innocent activities, such as playing football with friends. The lies and his supposed black eyes gained traction, and many began to believe his twisted account of events. It didn't take long for whispers to spread, and my friends began to look at me suspiciously. At first, I noticed minor changes. Friends who used to converse with me in the halls seemed distant, and invites to group hangouts grew fewer and farther between. It was as if a switch had been flipped, and people were unwilling to engage with the allegedly pampered girl charged with violence. One day, I got the confidence to ask my ex-best friend what had happened between us. She said that my twin brother had been circulating falsehoods about me. She disclosed the specifics of the lies he had told everyone, accusing me of actions I had never committed. I was stunned to hear her remarks. The emotion was a combination of incredulity and betrayal, as if the ground beneath me had given way. My brother, whom I grew up with, was spreading lies about me, accusing me of things I would never even consider committing. It was a betrayal that struck deep. Leaving me with a knot in my stomach and a sorrowful heart, I addressed my brother the following day at school, but he chose to ignore me. I begged him to stop lying about me. But he smirked and said I deserved to die alone. I was at a loss for words since his lies and actions were beginning to frighten me. I wanted to talk to my parents, but I was frightened they would believe my brother instead of me. Isolation stung, especially since I had always been open to establishing friends. My brother's jealousy-fueled lies seemed to be breaking apart the bonds I made over the years. The rumors spread among teachers as well. It was a weird sensation, as if I were living in a parallel realm where my genuine self was obscured by the wicked fiction told by my own twin. The lies had progressed beyond typical teenage chatter. They were now influencing how others regarded me. The unpleasant whispers swiftly reached my principal's ears, and my worst nightmare became reality. The principal summoned me and my brother, along with our parents, to his office to discuss the purported rumors. I sat there, my heart racing, as the principal demanded the truth. I believed my brother would finally come clean. But he doubled down on his lies. He told the principal that the reports were real and depicted me as a bully who beat him up when our parents were not around. I could not believe it. Shock rushed over me as my brother continued to tell this twisted story about how I was jealous of him for receiving more attention from our parents. He held to his story like glue, despite the fact that it was all lies. After hearing my brother's story, my mother burst into tears and clutched him like he was a hero. My father tried to console my brother, assuring him that it was brave of him to speak up and that he would ensure that nothing bad happened to him. Following that day, I attempted to defend myself, arguing with the principal that everything was fabricated. I felt as if I was drowning in a sea of accusations, desperately trying to get to the top, but my brother persisted, saying that I was this furious, violent person who took out my emotions on him every day. My mother's tears flowed as she grabbed onto my brother and gave me accusing stares. It was like fighting against a wall of belief in my brother's fabricated story. My principal sharply chastised me, stating that the school did not accept bullying and that these were grounds for suspension. I begged him not to suspend me, but he shook his head, saying he couldn't simply let it go. I implored him, tears flowing down my cheeks, attempting to explain that I had done nothing to my brother. The principal sternly informed me that I would be suspended for 10 days so that others would not bully anyone. It hit me hard, and I began crying even more, virtually asking him to reconsider. My parents, outraged and embarrassed by the incident, hauled me out of the principal's office. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to argue my case and make them understand, but they weren't having it. We left the school, my heart full of frustration and embarrassment. When we came home, things changed drastically. My father started packing my belongings out of the blue. I was stunned, perplexed, and had no idea what was going on. My mother asked him what he was doing, but he simply yelled that he couldn't allow me to live in the same house as my brother anymore. I was crying, virtually on my knees, and begged my brother to give them the truth, but he remained cool, unmoved by my feelings. My father kept packing my belongings before throwing the bag into our foyer. I clung to my father's legs, asking him not to kick me out. It felt as if a nightmare were happening. He informed me that a bully like me did not deserve to reside in his home, and that he would call his mother, my grandmother, to come and pick me up if she wished it. It felt as if the world had collapsed beneath me. I stood there in amazement, surrounded by my stuff scattered over the foyer, booted out of my own home. Eventually, my grandmother showed up. She helped me grab all of my belongings and load them into the car. She helped me into the passenger seat and made sure I was wearing my seatbelt before strolling towards my parents' front door. She rang the doorbell, and when my father opened it, she began yelling at him for treating me this way. With firm determination, she informed him that if he ever approached or attempted to contact me again, she would not hesitate to call the police or CPS because what he had done to a youngster like me might land him in jail. My mother attempted to shift blame by telling her that it was my fault. However, my grandmother was having none of it. She stood firm, defending me, and emphasized that I was only a child and did not deserve to be treated in such a harsh manner. That was the first time I realized how powerful my grandmother was. She did not cower before my parents, and unlike them, she trusted me. We eventually drove away, leaving behind my house, the only place I had ever grown up. I can't even begin to describe how excruciatingly painful I felt at the time. I recall crying on the bed and refusing to eat anything despite my grandmother's insistence. When I informed her what my brother had done, she was astonished as well. She told me that she trusted my version of the story, and I was relieved that I had at least one person on my side. When the 10-day suspension was removed, returning to school was like going back into the lion's lair. As I entered the familiar hallways, my classmates' expressions told volumes. Judgment, murmurs, and sidelong stares. The weight of the bogus charges remained in the air. Meanwhile, my brother shamelessly ignored me, as if I didn't exist. He had made friends with a few people who believed his version of the tale, and saw him as the victim of my attacks. I tried to tell everyone my side of the tale, but it went unheard. I was an outsider, saddled with an unfair reputation that stuck to me like a shadow no matter where I went, the classroom, the cafeteria, or the corridors. The eyes that met mine were filled with contempt and suspicion. I became a loner. I would keep my head down, attend all of my lessons, eat lunch alone in the cafeteria, and then return home. I didn't have any friends, and it seemed like no one wanted me there. Throughout this, my parents never called to check on me. My grandmother would continuously remind me that this was not my fault, and that things would eventually be fine. I graduated from high school with good grades and was looking forward to attending college, where I hoped to have a better life. It wasn't until I went away to college that I discovered what freedom felt like for the first time. No one was looking over my shoulder, comparing my grades, or attempting to compete with me. I met and became friends with folks who shared my interests. Despite the mental and physical scars left by my family and classmates over the years, I focused on putting it all behind me and making the most of my college experience. During this period, I realized I had an aptitude for content writing. I'd always wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't sure if it would work out in the long run. As a result, I chose to give up on my dream. However, in order to supplement my income, I began working as a freelance writer. I signed up for several freelancing websites, which helped me get tasks from well-known companies. This is how I progressively began to compile a portfolio of my work. Throughout college, I maintained my side hustle and never asked my parents for a penny. When I finished college, instead of taking a corporate job, I realized I could work full-time as a content writer. I was doing well since I had numerous clients and long-term professional ties with them, allowing me to work on multiple projects. Having a respectable freelancing business not only gave me financial independence, but it also enabled me to explore the world as a digital nomad. Traveling helped me heal from my past, even if it was not easy. I saved as much money as I could and took a gamble on myself. I've seen a lot of the world over the years, but there's always so much more to see. My grandma was the only person I considered family throughout all of this, and I cherished her. She was quite unhappy when I moved out, but she knew that I needed to be self-sufficient. Despite my tight schedule, I made it a point to be available for her whenever possible. On weekends, I would pay Mom a visit, frequently eating meals or simply sitting on the porch, absorbed in chats about everything from childhood memories to current events. On weekends, I would spend full days assisting her with household tasks or taking her to the neighboring park for a leisurely walk. I recently completed one of the most important assignments of my career. While I can't reveal the name, I was extraordinarily fortunate to write articles and product descriptions for them. After the job was completed, I asked the team I worked with to submit grade evaluations on my websites, which they were delighted to do. I grabbed screenshots of several of their evaluations and shared them on Instagram, understanding that collaborating with this brand was a big deal. As expected, several other content writers congratulated me on my professional accomplishments, and some even printed my article to help get the word out. This is how I began receiving messages from strangers who also wanted assistance with their websites. My family observed this as well, and some contacted me to express their congratulations. My college's principal eventually called me, seeing that I was doing well and inviting me to come to the college for a seminar to talk to students about starting a career as a content writer. I was apprehensive because I'm not good at public speaking, but I decided to take a chance and consent. When I found myself standing in front of expectant faces, sharing my experiences and insights, I felt as if my life had gone full circle. In my speech, I discussed my hardships and how I pushed hard to keep going despite the difficult times. It was a truly rewarding experience to encourage others and contribute to the growth of the writing community. Some of my videos went viral on Facebook as people connected with them. It felt fantastic to be finally recognized for my efforts. Last week, I was asked to talk on a local news program. It was a show about the benefits of content creation, and they asked me to share my experiences and insights with their audience. I was nervous but yet excited about the prospect. During the event, I discussed my experiences, the value of customer feedback, and how a simple appreciation message may lead to fantastic opportunities. The opportunity to reach a larger audience and encourage more professionals in the area was both humbling and exciting. When it finally aired, I uploaded some of these snippets on Instagram since I was honored to be invited to a TV show. This is how my relatives and cousins first learned about my professional accomplishments because my parents never mentioned me to anyone. They had no idea I was working with well-known brands and appearing on television shows. This is how words swiftly went among my family. I guess this TV interview must have finally reached my parents' ears because just a few days later, I was working on another project while keeping my phone on mute. When I finished my work, I checked my phone and was surprised to find 6 missed calls from my mother. I was astonished to see her name on my phone because it had been a long time since she had phoned me. After so many years of stillness, I couldn't understand why she was phoning. I hesitantly called her back, and she answered right away. I asked her if everything was fine, and my mother began to congratulate me. My father, who was most likely sitting directly next to her, also joined in on the chat. He began to probe about my life and well-being, and I responded without much thinking. It didn't strike me as weird until they asked how much I was making these days. I explained that it was none of their business. My father answered, "We're family, so don't be shy about telling us your income." I assured him that I was doing well financially. Hearing this, my mother proceeded to describe how difficult their life was these days, and my brow furrowed in suspicion. Basically, this is how our talk went. "Mom, we're retired now and we've wanted to renovate the house for a while. It's not in great shape, but we don't have any funds left." Me: "Okay. Mom, your achievement has given us hope. We saw your TV interview today and thought you might be able to assist us out by paying for the improvements. Dad, after all, we are a family. Please do not hesitate to share some of your revenue with us. We genuinely need your help." Me: "Are you kidding me? Why are you asking for money when you haven't even spoken to me in years? I'm not sure what prompted you to contact me, and while I appreciate your congratulations, I won't be able to assist you." Hearing this, my mother began telling me that I was being selfish and that I needed to support them as a family. My father emphasized that as my parents, they deserved to be cared for and that this was the least I could do. I was so angry at this point that I wanted to tell them off. Suddenly, I had an idea. Instead of simply disagreeing with them, I would teach them a lesson once and for all for thinking they could mooch off of me after my parents mistreated me for so many years. I told them that I was willing to help them, provided they agreed to my demands. My father was curious and asked me what it was. Without hesitation, I made my demand: if they wanted my assistance, they had to openly confess in front of our family and friends that my brother was the mastermind behind the false stories that had harmed my reputation. I wanted them to embarrass my brother in front of everyone, just like they had humiliated me by believing his lies and manipulations. I wanted them to accept responsibility for their actions and recognize the anguish they had caused. Hearing about my untenable state, my father began to question the necessity of such an admission. My mother told me that this was all unnecessary, and that we could have a private discussion without engaging others, but I stood firm. This was a non-negotiable requirement for any further aid they wanted me to provide. As the tension rose, my father raised his voice, establishing his authority as my father, and began to underline that it was my responsibility to assist my family in need. My mother, in a last-ditch effort, persuaded me to do the right thing and assist them, citing the years they had spent raising me. I couldn't help but see the irony in their sudden attractiveness. I reminded them of the past, that they had kicked me out and that my grandmother, not them, had reared me. They became increasingly angry, but I told them unequivocally that if they wanted to approach me and request financial aid, the truth had to be acknowledged publicly and my brother had to face the consequences of his conduct. Since this talk, my parents have been calling me often, but I'm ignoring them. I'm beginning to regret even phoning them back that day. I'd like to know if I'd be a complete idiot if I didn't aid my parents. Update. It's been a crazy week since I last shared my story, and the outpouring of support and encouragement has been astounding. It's encouraging to know that I'm not alone. At this moment, I'm happy everyone believes that I shouldn't interact with my parents, or even contemplate assisting them after everything they put me through. I gave them such a requirement, since I knew they would be unable to comply. I know they love my brother too much, and even if they've realized by now that it was all his lies, I know they'll never put him through what they did to me. My brother sent me a nasty text message today after my parents tried to call me again, and I refused to answer. This is what he wrote. Hey sis, I haven't seen you in a long time and I can tell you that every day without you has been wonderful. I heard Mom and Dad contacted you and you offered them a strange ultimatum. You're aware that they will never go through with it, right? They plainly never loved you and will never hurt me. I admit I lied about you 15 years ago, but it's been a long time. So stop being so self-centered and attempt to move on from the past. You're unmarried and childless, so why not help them out by paying for their home repairs and renovations? Do the right thing and become a better daughter. Seeing the message felt like a stab in the chest. The hubris to reject the difficulties I had encountered and the conditions I had established revealed his lack of empathy. The attempt to guilt-trip me by emphasizing my single and childless situation added an extra degree of insensitivity. His idea that I should prioritize their needs over my own was not only disrespectful but also demonstrated how little he valued me. Fueled by dissatisfaction and a strong desire for justice, I decided it was time to take matters into my own hands and expose the truth that had been buried for far too long. I sat down to compose an email to my parents and close relatives detailing the traumatic events of my upbringing and the unfair treatment I had received while growing up in my family home. In the email, I highlighted the tight and restrictive environment I encountered at home, as well as how my parents treated me differently from my twin brother. I also looked into the spiteful and utterly false rumor my brother had circulated about me at school, which had resulted in serious consequences and ruined my image. I wrote about how my parents had kicked me out, and if it hadn't been for my grandmother, I could have died on the streets by now. Toward the conclusion, I requested that everyone read a message my brother had sent me. I've enclosed a screenshot in which he acknowledged lying about me. It was a simple confession, and I hoped it would reveal the lies that had lasted for too long. I sent the email just an hour ago, and I know what will happen when my parents and brother see it next. I'll let you know how my family reacts to my email. Update. It's been a month since my previous update, and a lot has happened. As you may guess, my family erupted when they received the email. My parents have faced criticism from relatives who were previously unaware of the extent of their favoritism and emotional abuse. Many family members contacted me, saying they had no idea about everything and apologized for not being there for me. My brother and dad sent me a bombardment of text messages that became increasingly hostile and aggressive. So I contacted a lawyer who issued them a cease and desist notice. It basically told them not to approach me again, and if they did, they would face severe legal penalties. I guess this spooked them since they stopped calling me. My grandmother believes I did the right thing by telling everyone what occurred, and she fully supports me. She is the only person who is important to me, therefore I'm delighted she has my back. Update. It's been 2 months since my last post, and I'm pleased to say that everything is going well in my life right now. Professionally, my article writing business has thrived. Invitations to speak at seminars and podcasts continue to come in, confirming my status as a renowned expert in my field. I'm as close to my granny as ever. I recently took a 1-week sabbatical from work to spend quality time with her. She is into gardening these days and has taught me a lot about the many flowers and herbs in her yard. My favorite and most cherished memories are of spending time with her, whether we were sharing meals, having profound conversations, or simply enjoying one another's company. My family hasn't contacted me since they received the letter from my lawyer, so I'm glad they're staying away. Personally, I've started attending therapy in the hopes of working on my own recovery. For the time being, I believe this is the final update. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. Refusing my boyfriend's threesome request led to a wedding drama and a shocking revelation. Am I the? This is a throwaway because too much identifying info is on my main page. If I, 29F, met my boyfriend, Michael, 35M, at a show I performed in. I am a theater person as a hobby, and he complimented my performance and bought me a drink. We have been together now for a little over a year. His sister got married last week, and I was initially pleased to be asked to be a bridesmaid, but also a bit surprised, as she barely knows me. But I thought this was an attempt to have an excuse to also get to know each other better. Michael and I got into an argument the week before because he said that he wanted to entertain the thought of spicing up our sex life and having a threesome. He said, "Since I was bi, why not?" I didn't like the idea too much and said so, and it devolved into a petty Cold War. He started to ignore my messages after he left my place. He didn't reply to me at all until the day before the wedding, asking what time he needed to pick me up, since we can't go separate, otherwise, people will gossip about us. He barely said anything to me the whole time we traveled to the venue. The wedding was fine, but at the reception, he got me a plate and leaned in to kiss me, but I shied away and he got up to mingle. I started feeling ill not too long after, and 911 was called. I realized I was having an allergic reaction, but had my pen but still had to be carted off by the ambulance. And that's when someone who was looking for Michael said that he had left with some of the other groomsmen to a bar nearby. I called 6 times and texted that it was an emergency as I was getting checked out by the paramedics, and again when they strongly suggested I go to the hospital. But he never replied. I was released by the hospital and called him to ask him to pick me up, but he didn't pick up. So I woke up my best friend and she took me home and stayed with me overnight to make sure I was okay. The next morning, Michael called me, but I was still asleep, so he left me a lengthy voicemail yelling at me that I ruined his sister's wedding and that I always have to make things about me. He came over to further berate me and told me he should just break up with me at this point as I'm dramatic and this is all too much. So, I pointed out that he had gotten my plate. Knew full well that I have a legit allergy to coconut, and that his sister had told me afterwards that he knew that the cake he gave me was the coconut cream cake. As all the food had signs saying what it was and what the ingredients were, as I'm not the only person with allergies that attended. He left telling me that he can't talk to me when I'm this way. I was honestly exhausted, so I didn't bother going after him, but his father called me to ask how I was doing, and after I answered, he then told me how I'm hurting Michael's heart by blaming him. And Michael has been inconsolable since we fought. I texted Michael to ask if we could talk. But the conversation went back around somehow to the threesome and how I don't respect him even in intimate settings or want to hear him out regarding his needs and make things about me. I am so confused because, to me, this feels manipulative, but I respect his father so much. I go to their church and he is a pastor there, so to have him tell me I'm in the wrong threw me at it. A lot of comments are suggesting that this was intentional, and I've actually never considered he gave me something I'm allergic to on purpose. And certainly not to use against me to leverage in our argument. But I think I may have to come clean and talk to his parents. I know them well, so hopefully, it won't go too badly. Small update. Michael texted me this morning to apologize. He said the wedding was stressing him out and he had a lot on his mind, so he accidentally handed me the plate he meant for himself, not the one for me. He said he didn't know I was in the hospital and felt bad he wasn't there for me, but he left the reception with some of the groomsmen to blow off much-needed steam. I don't know how I feel about it all, so I just replied, "Okay." He is now asking to come over and talk this out in person. Second edit. For any and all of you calling me stupid or implying I am a child and asking why I am still with this guy, etc., just know you remind me a lot of him, of how he used to put me down and bully me. It's a real wonder of mine if you treat people in your life like he did me. I suspect you do. Glad to be rid of him and indifferent about you. Relevant comments. Comment 1 OP. Be honest. Have you, now that you are looking back, seen red flags like this? This behavior likely didn't just show up. Have you ever gotten ill after a disagreement with him? OP. Oddly enough, I am sitting with my BFF, and she asked me the same question, and yes, actually, our first real argument that I can remember. I was down with a stomach bug for almost a week. And he visited me and made soup. Then, the only big argument I can recall outside this one, He wanted to use labels really soon onto us going on some dates, and I didn't. And the next morning, I was sick with chest pains and stomach cramps. I don't want to sound dramatic or accusatory, but since people have commented he might have purposefully given me something I'm allergic to, I just don't know anymore. Comment to NTA, the two of you are completely incompatible. He wants threesomes, you want to attend wedding receptions without leaving in an ambulance. Okay. When I read this, I was with Bestie and we've been drinking, and the scream I scrumptious laughing so hard nearly killed me more effectively than the coconut. LMO. Update 1. Well, many of you were right, I should not have met him in person, but I did. He took me out to lunch, insisting he pay for it all, and it was incredibly over the top. He had flowers and a written letter of apology, but as some of you messaged me, his apologies dodged the point by way of, if I hurt you, or that you're feeling X or Y feeling, etc. He quoted some scriptures and said he has repented, as his carelessness caused me harm. I wasn't much moved by any of it until he said how much his family loves me and how much our church roots for us as a couple. I kind of sat back and realized that one flimsy reason I was even entertaining forgiving him and staying was because of the pressure I dealt with as the GF of a pastor's son. It occurred to me that there were so many times I let things slide because he is the heir apparent, so he had the power and the social aspect of our community. Sorry, I know I'm rambling. But I'm emotional and tipsy. I remember just staring at him and saying it was incredibly alarming that by now, he can't be aware of my one allergy. And that he didn't bother to tell his own GF he was stepping out with the guys or even that he was stepping out of his own sister's wedding at all. He then said it was really actually kind of stupid of me to eat a cake that had coconut, and implied I'm an idiot for not realizing what I had was coconut. I realized then he would never accept that he was in the wrong, and thus there was no point. I stood up and smiled and said, "You know what, don't worry about it. Thanks for dinner, good night." To which he replied that if I wasn't going to grow up and accept his apology, I'm a waste of his time. He uses that a lot whenever we disagree, and it usually hurts me deeply. But this time it was like a Rolodex of memories flooded my brain, and I really suspect he's been deliberately making me sick whenever we disagree to teach me a lesson. I said I was done, and he needn't waste his time with me from this point on, and left. I then sent screenshots to his father, explaining the situation as best I can without blaming Michael for pride illnesses without proof, and I got a text about 20 minutes ago from his father. His father is incredibly disappointed in my immaturity, and hurt that I wouldn't even give it until Sunday at church where we can pray together, talk it out, and heal. I felt this way for a while. But I was able to say at this time that using religion as a tool of guilt is low, and I am no longer concerned with his version of God as that version is a judgmental, cruel, and heartless jerk. While the one I always thought of was loving, compassionate, and kind. And I am done. I was told by him and by further emails that I am no longer welcome at my church until I reconcile with my true husband and learn compassion and respect for my leaders. So I guess that's it. I will enjoy sleeping in tomorrow and eating coconut-free food while lazing about my home rather than going to 3 separate church services starting at 8 a.m. And then figure it all out from there. I don't know how to sign off, but I do watch a concerning amount of Charlotte Doy videos, and she usually ends things with practical advice like, "Do your laundry," or something, so I will just say, live for yourself, feed your soul, and know you're enough. I certainly am going to put in the work to get there. And I hope we all make it to the other side, content and filled with love and joy. And by the way, Fu Michael, I know you are reading this. I know you know it's me. And I hope your socks are always just a little soggy. OP added in the comments here, I forgot to add to my post, but I didn't want to bring the threesome requests into it. Well, I sent his daddy screenshots of some texts if you'd like some drama here or the top 2. It was the night I sent him home after he tried and failed to pressure me into sex. He told me that I was missing out and should be grateful since your body makes me sick, but my love for you is stronger. Would it kill you to be grateful enough to just do a HJ? And on his birthday, I had just been in the hospital after passing out from exhaustion and dehydration and went straight to his party. I stayed at his place until everyone left. And I left soon after helping clean all but the kitchen. He sent, "You could have cleaned the kitchen then or stayed over for sex. Then you're a waste of time if I don't even get birthday sex. Thanks a lot." And after both he suggested adding a third, his dad hasn't responded. Relevant comments. Comment 1, holy crap, and you stayed with him? You poor girl. No one deserves someone like that in their life, but you didn't say if you told his dad about him sending you to the hospital and potentially killing you because we both know. And the rest of Reddit knows that he did that intentionally. And if there was proof of him giving you that cake, you could probably send his happy ass to jail. I didn't and don't have the best self-esteem, and here is the only black woman in the town that I've known of. I've always known that I'm considered less desirable, not saying that's right. But just knowing where I live. I've been here since my preteen years. When Michael asked me out, it was like a parade. Everyone acted like it was a Cinderella story, and I won a lottery or something. I have a friend who I've been texting today, and she is letting me know how dumb I've been. I never told her of our issues, and she's about ready to commit crimes, lol. I think I lost myself for a bit, but I wanted to leave the church low-key for a while because of my treatment, so that helps a bit. Update 2, it has been a hot minute. I forgot about my post until I was watching a YouTube video on Reddit stories, and the story reminded me that I never did update. I found a church in my city a bit more laid back. Like we can go to the pub after and have a laid back laugh. I did like it and made amazing friends I'm still in touch with, but the going to church idea came from my therapist. And it was to see if I do identify with the church or the ideals of it, and I don't. So now I am back to being the heathen I am, lol. My ex quickly moved on. And he had a new GF within a month of us breaking up. Bless that woman. I thought, because isn't she in for a ride? Oddly enough, she reached out to me on my Facebook, and I was curious and opened it. She started with who she is, how long she and ex have been dating, and how long they knew each other, childhood friends, so basically forever. She then said that she feels convicted by the Holy Ghost to seek a resolution between me and ex, and she is worried I may be his true wife. And if I cannot forgive, then I am proving I am not. And to let her know, as she cannot marry him until I make this clear. I kid you not, seeing the screenshots, the chat with my new church buddies. My friends sent vomiting emojis and that this is a cult and not a faith. I concluded they were right and replied with, "Yeah, marry him if that's what you want." And nothing more. I am getting messages from members of the church, but I don't much care. I've loved my life since leaving. I didn't know life could be so enjoyed, really. And it makes me wonder how much damage the church had on me. But for now, just for fun, I am going to an appointment with a friend of a friend's apprentice on tarot readings, lol. No, that's true. I was asked, no offense to anyone who believes in it, it's just not normally my thing, so I'm curious and interested. Maybe it will be good. I will know. Now, to the next story. Story 2. Am I the for flipping out on my fiancé for canceling all the vegan food options from our wedding menu behind my back? My fiancé, 31 male, and I, 25 female, are getting married soon. There wasn't much that disagreed on during the wedding planning except for food. Me and my family are vegans, and there are so many reasons why we chose this lifestyle. And one of them being that we have a history of health issues. My fiancé and his family are the complete opposite. They're hardcore meat eaters, which is fine by me, obviously. However, when deciding on the wedding food menu, I wanted to add 4 or 5 vegan options. My fiancé and his mom objected, saying it was a waste of money over food that isn't real food. They also argued that this would be offensive for their guests, and suggested my vegan options just be the good old salads and appetizers. His mom wanted cupcakes, lol. I said no, because for one, it's me and my family who's paying, and 2, I want to make my guests feel welcome and not be treated as second-class citizens by being served salad. My fiancé made a face and said, "Isn't that what vegans eat?" I refused to argue about it and said it was final. The other day, I found out that he had cancelled all the vegan options and took them off the menu completely, and behind my back. I was seething. I called him at work, but he kept hanging up on me. I went straight to his workplace and confronted him there and just flipped out on him. He was stunned to see me. He at first said it was his mom's idea. Then told me to go home because I was making a scene at the office. The fight continued at home. And he defended himself by saying that I sort of made him resort to doing this after I kept brushing off his thoughts and input, and refusing to accommodate his family. But there were plenty of meat options, so why can't I get 4 or 5 vegan options when I'm paying for it? He yelled that it was his wedding too, not my family's. My family said it was fine, and they'll figure it out, and told me to let it go, but I refused. AIT for putting my foot down on this? Verdict, not the update one. So his mom messaged me earlier to try to get me to listen to what she had to say after I kept ignoring her phone calls. She spent long walls of text just to address what I did at her son's workplace, calling it all kinds of stuff from immature to unhinged. She then went on to explain how she's noticed that me and my family kept acting dismissive of her son's input and contributions to the wedding. She said that she noticed my behavior towards him and her entire family, and wanted to speak up earlier, but didn't, and tried to keep the peace. She then went on to address the food menu issue and denied her involvement in the cancellation of the vegan option, but that didn't mean she doesn't support her son's decision. Moreover, she thought it was so responsible of him to make that move because of my continual refusal to see how this stuff is a waste of money. She also pointed out how I kept saying, "I paid for it," and said that technically this isn't just my money, it's mine and his. Because we're getting married, she suggested I wake up and get rid of my money I paid for it mentality. She finally mentioned how bad this whole situation is making me look, and said that she and her son had already offered a number of compromises that I chose to brush off and decided to make it my weird hill to die on. She said that not only her son is upset, but she and the family are as well after hearing about it, and suggested I just agree on their compromise and be done with it. This pissed me off beyond belief. I responded by letting her know that I'm still standing my ground on this, even if I'll have to call the whole wedding off because of it, because honestly, this is just ridiculous. It is my mom and dad, they don't even know what to say anymore. Apparently my fiancé saw my response to her. He's with her and is now trying to call me, but right now, I'm waiting on him to get home and see if he's still insisting on the stance he took. I'll update if there's anything worth adding after we talk. Relevant comments. Comment 1 ETA. Are you sure you want to marry this man and his family? They have no respect at all for you and yours, OP. Frankly, I have no idea why his mom feels so strongly about getting involved. I only included her in wedding planning because I respect her, but I guess it's like they say, give an inch, and they'll take a mile. Comment 2, info. How many options are there in total? So, like 4 or 5 non-vegan and 4 or 5 vegan, meaning 8 to 10 options for meals? Is this a buffet or restaurant reception, or is this a multi-course menu? And so there's essentially one vegan meal with 4 or 5 courses. NTA because he did this behind your back without talking to you, but I'm wondering why he cares what other people eat. Also, he's the AH for claiming he doesn't know what vegans eat. You're vegan. He knows you eat more than salad. OP, aside from the vegan, we have 6 options with meat. His mom picked 1. I'm paying for the whole thing. Comment 3, if you marry him, this is the rest of your life. He'll do whatever his mom says when it comes to your kids and managing your life. Update 2. So the talk didn't go well. I waited for him to come home so we could have a final conversation about it, but he still insisted on his stance. For more details, his family are a bit on the heavy side. Nothing wrong with that, they're perfectly within their right to decide how to live, but they get easily offended at the mention of the words weight and food. I tried so hard to focus on the issue at hand, but I noticed there was a pattern of this behavior. He said it wasn't true and that this was just an attempt for me to throw past conflicts at him in order to win the current one. He claimed he tried to reason with me about why and how his guests might see those vegan options as offensive. He also said that his family love food and consider it a big deal, and how he didn't want his family to feel like there are certain options that they couldn't touch. He feels that there's a difference in how I treat them versus how I treat my family. He then went on to explain how it's just an event, and how my family should just accept what's on the menu, and if they felt inconvenienced, so what? It's just a one-time thing. They're not going to die if they had salad and appetizers. What he said wasn't a good enough reason for me, because his folks are going to think and say what they want, but at the end of the day, it's my wedding. And, to be honest, realizing that my partner himself thinks it's okay to steamroll my opinions and decisions simply because he's prioritizing others and their opinions over me was really upsetting and not something that could be looked past. Normally, I'm a person of rational discussions and compromises. I'm all about compromises. I'd compromised on much bigger matters than just food, but like people said, it's not about the food anymore, if it ever was. Like, he'd literally lose nothing if he let me have what I wanted, but apparently, he was willing to lose it all over this, which is fine by me. I gave him back the ring and called everything off. I just couldn't envision myself living like this any longer. Having to walk on eggshells for his family, and letting him basically override my opinions and have the final say, no matter what. Marriage is about compromise, and here, he has nothing to lose. Yet chose to do this to me and my family. Mind you, this is my first serious relationship, and I didn't know what to expect. But it's safe to say that he and his mom and family did make it feel like I was taking crazy pills on many, many occasions. So that's that. Last thing he said was that I chose my family over him and ended everything for the sake of keeping him happy. Decision has been made, and it's done. Just wanted to give an update to those who wanted it. Thank you so much for your endless stream of advice and support. Relevant comments. Comment 1, good for you. Marriage is about compromise. And it doesn't sound like your ex is interested in compromising or even letting you have a say in things. That isn't a partnership. OP, thank you, and you're right. Honestly, I felt kind of hesitant about posting an update. In fact, I was hesitant about posting my situation as a whole. Normally, I'm not the type to share my private business online, but I was desperate. Like I said, there were times where his family made me feel like I was taking crazy pills. Honestly, and I'm going to say this anyway, I hate them. They always made me feel like an outsider and a stranger. They never really warmed up to me and instead pretended to like me, but it was obvious they resented me. They claimed that I'm a covert fatphobic, but in reality, I got mocked along with my family for being underweight due to health issues I'd mentioned before. Don't even get me started on ex's future MIL though. I feel as though I got to let it all out and vent. Comment 2, you go, girl. Dude 100% laid out a roadmap where only his opinion matters. And yours is irrelevant. This probably wasn't the first time, but it for sure would not be the last. OP, exactly. Like I said, I'd noticed a pattern of this behavior but kept rationalizing it. Which was a huge mistake on my part. It's been utter torture trying to please him and his family. I'm an emotional mess right now. But there's this little voice of reassurance telling me I've gone through the worst and survived it. I'm so thankful this happened, it helped me see things clearer. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.